Hello and welcome to Win Over Depression. I am your host, Tamara Trotter, and today we'll be talking about a week in the life of a depressed individual. Stay tuned. So as I said a few minutes ago, I will be talking about my situation dealing with depression this past week. And so I was really dealing with my emotions this week because I had suffered a loss and it was the 1 year anniversary of that loss. And so automatically I was in an emotional state. And so what I noticed about myself is that when I am in an emotional state, the things that I need to do for myself are usually neglected. An example would be I'm a trainer, and so I train virtually. And so because I'm a trainer, I have to be present for my learners. And so what that means is I cannot give myself a pass if I'm feeling an episode of depression coming on, because it's not my learner's fault that I'm not in the best mood. So when that happens, I notice that I neglect what I need to do personally. So for you probably, those of you who may not suffer from depression, you probably plan things out in advance. And so I knew that I was going out of town this weekend. And so it would be necessary for me to prepare myself, to pack what I needed, to take care of my dogs, and to handle other business. However, because I wasn't up to it, I put it off until the very last day. And I knew that by putting it off, I would be behind schedule and then probably end up getting to my venue much later than I had anticipated. But sometimes you just can't muster up enough willpower in order to accomplish your goals. As a matter of fact, I had to speak with my accountability partner, and she was able to help get me back in a better space. And so what I do is I will let my accountability partner know what my mood rating is. And so if my mood rating is a 4 or a 5, then that means that I'm struggling. I'm not really focused on myself and what I need to do. And I'm basically just doing the bare minimum because the bare minimum has to be done. So sometimes I just want you to know that even though you want to be focused, the depression and the symptoms sometimes win. And when that happens, your accountability coach is the person that you can turn to help get you back on track. Because I really believe that I may not have really been able to make it to this event this weekend if I wasn't able to redirect my pain and my symptoms. So I really need for people who are listening to this podcast and trying to better understand what it's like to suffer with chronic depression. It's not something that you can turn off and on. You have your up days and your down days. You have your peaks and your valleys. And of course, we want to always be at our peak if at all possible. But because mental illness is so unpredictable, oftentimes it's not necessarily something that you control. And that is why those who suffer with a mental illness tend to sleep when they're not feeling well, because they'd rather just rest. And actually, there is a mental and physical exhaustion that you experience. So please be understanding and not feel that someone is just wanting to sleep in or just not wanting to do anything because they just don't want to and it has nothing to do with their mental illness. I'm telling you, that is not true. Because I can remember years ago when I would be depressed for 2 weeks at a time, sometimes a month. And so when I say 2 or 3 days, that is leaps and bounds better than in the past. So you have to gauge where you are, and you have to set a time frame in which you will not continue to feel depressed. And I know it's easier said than done, but remember how we talk about how important it is to be proactive. So you have to set some boundaries when it comes to your mental illness. Otherwise, your mental illness will get the best of you. But you have to demand and set certain expectations for yourself when it comes to your mental illness. And so sometimes I think about all of the time and energy that I have to utilize in order to keep my depression at bay. And I would imagine that many people who suffer from depression, they're just not able to do it because it's so difficult. And so I want you to know that I have been there, but I have worked extremely hard in order to actually be able to do this podcast. And so remember that it does not do you any good to compare yourself to another person that suffers with the mental illness, because I'm on my own journey and you, my friend, are on your journey. So you know how to gauge how you're feeling, and you know when you are making incremental improvements in your situation. So definitely set some parameters and some boundaries around your depression, because if you do not, as I said earlier, it will not only get the best of you, it will start to consume you, and your life will start to go downhill very quickly. And for that reason, it's important that you come up with a plan to keep your depression at bay. Because if you're working, you have to continue to work in order to provide for yourself and your family. So you cannot afford to have a long episode of depression that may cause you not to be able to work. So you have to be proactive. So I'm feeling much better. I'm very glad that I was able to make it to my venue. And it was really with the help of my accountability coach that I was able to really work this out, because I was really concerned because I was just feeling so down. And it has been a very long time since I've been in that situation. And I know that I had a very good reason for feeling that way, but I still have to keep moving forward. We have to keep pushing ourselves and moving forward, because we know we have to stay in the game of life. And we know that no matter how down we feel, it's going to change. It's going to turn around. And we have to always believe that. But what happens is, and the reason that people commit suicide is during a time when they're feeling down, they just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they, even if they just slept it off, the next day would probably be better, but they didn't wait around for that next day. And so I really want this episode to be about you understanding what it looks like, what depression feels like, and know that it is a difficult situation to be in. But I am a living testimony that if you are proactive and if you do the work, you can feel so much better. But please give yourself some grace, because everybody's struggling right now. And so you may have more episodes and more symptoms of depression, and that's okay. All you have to do is get up the next morning and start all over again and hope that the next day is better. But you can't dwell on the feelings. And even though they present themselves, you can't let it affect you in such a way that you start to take steps backward. So I really hope that this episode really will help you to realize what a person experiences. And so the next time either yourself or a loved one is experiencing an episode of depression, you understand it a little better. And that's really what you can do, is to try to understand it a little better. But I guarantee you that unless you experience it up close and personal, you really won't understand what it really feels like. And that's just the truth. So I never want to end my podcast without thanking you so very much for listening. I continue to grow by leaps and bounds, and I am very excited about what 2023 will bring to my nonprofit organization, Win Over Depression. I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also called Win Over Depression. You can also join me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Win Over Depression. You can also find me on Pinterest at TT Mental Health Expert, as well as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Tumblr under Tamara Trotter. If you would like to help this podcast, consider becoming a patron. You can go to www.patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Tamara Trotter. And as little as $5 to $10 per month will help me expand this podcast on an international level. And I actually already have many people who are listening in other countries and states. But I vow to spread awareness about mental illness in an effort to reduce the number of suicides in this country. So I really could use your help, and anything that you could offer would be very much appreciated. Remember, giving up is never an option, and we must stay in the game of life. I will see you next time, next Friday, on Win Over Depression. Take care, my friend.